You never know what you're going to get. But the hiring manager I talked to, he started his career in software engineering and then also pivoted into cybersecurity. And now at the time, he was like an MD or managing director at the bank. So he was like pretty high position.
You're in there as a newbie in cybersecurity. What was that like?
Yeah, I really liked my time at B of A. It was a really good experience. So I guess like the first thing is just the rotations that I was able to work in. Was just looking for like, I don't know, how to make a string or something in Java or C# or Python or whatever. I used Stack Overflow a lot during college, and I'm sure, anyone learning how to code did.
Okay. What is your favorite AI tool to use these days?
Honestly, just good old ChatGPT.
Hey everyone. Today we're joined by the Brilliant Sandra. So she's a cybersecurity professional, she's an educator and a mentor. Sandra has over 110,000 YouTube subscribers and more than 5 million views. Sandra's journey is nothing short of truly impressive. She started as a software engineer and transitioned into cybersecurity, working with top companies like Stack Overflow and Bank of America. And now she is absolutely dedicated to helping others break into the industry through her platform. She provides resources, mentorships, roadmaps for beginners, and so much more. This is Cybersecurity Uncomplicated with Cyber Queen, where we break barriers one chat at a time. No one has the exact roadmap, but together we're challenging stereotypes. We'll show you that cybersecurity is for everyone. We're bold, smart, and unapologetically diverse. So Sandra, I am so excited to have you. Thanks for joining us and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. That was a very nice intro.
I'm glad. So, maybe to start with just the first question to you is, can you tell us a little bit just about who is Sandra? I know I gave all of your professional credentials here maybe, but can you tell a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So hi, I'm Sandra. I worked in software engineering, like Venicia said, and I switched into cybersecurity early on in my career. I worked in Blue Team, GRC. I had a short stint on a junior pen testing team as well. And then along the way, I also started this YouTube channel. So I started it back when I started working in 2019. So it's 5 years ago now, which is crazy to me. And I just started it for fun because in college, I was always involved with different volunteering groups like Girls Who Code and Tech Girls, which basically brought underrepresented groups, trying to teach them how to code, trying to get them interested in tech careers. And that kind of transitioned into me also starting a YouTube channel. It wasn't originally for tech, but I kind of just always wanted to start a YouTube channel. And when I did, I made one video on how I started my career in cybersecurity. And that video surprisingly did very well. Back then for my channel, I think I got a few thousand views, and I got a lot of questions about what I used to study and different resources and how to break into cybersecurity. So I just made more videos answering those questions. And then eventually my YouTube channel just became about cybersecurity and, starting a career in tech. And I kind of just rolled with it. Last year, I started my career sabbatical, so I took a step away from the corporate world, and I'm currently dedicating all my time full time to this. And on, outside of work stuff, I really like traveling. I really like eating food. And I also travel a lot with my cats. So that's basically me in a nutshell.
Wow, that's super interesting. And so many touch points on there that we'll obviously get into as we talk more in the episode. But one strong question that really comes to my mind is then, from software engineering, you started pretty early on in security. So what was the transition there, or the probe really, to go into cybersecurity from being a software engineer?
Yeah. So in college, I wasn't, 100% sure on what I wanted to do. So I actually started my college career as a nursing major. I wasn't in nursing for very long. I actually transitioned out during freshman orientation, and I switched to computer science because I knew a few other people who went to school with me who also chose computer science. And I heard that, you could get a decent paying job outside of college. So I switched into CS, and then I was doing a whole bunch of different kinds of internships. During school, I tried really hard to get as much experience as I could because I really wanted to, land a really good job after college. So I was doing stuff in data analytics. I did stuff in big data. I did software engineering. And then it wasn't until my senior year where I got into cybersecurity. So my school offered this computer security and digital forensics certification. And I eventually switched from CS to IST, which is information science and technology. So a different major. And that major basically focused a bit more on broader, like non-coding roles. Sorry. So that was kind of where I kind of got a little bit more experience using digital forensics tools and a little bit of network security experience as well. But I wasn't like fully in cybersecurity. In fact, I wasn't really looking for cybersecurity roles until I went to the Grace Hopper conference, which is a conference that I've actually attended 6 times as a student, but also with some of my previous companies hiring at Grace Hopper as well. So I definitely recommend going to this conference if you're a woman in tech and looking for a job. It actually passed already this year, but next year, I highly recommend checking it out. And basically, there are a lot of different career booths there. And there's a company, Bank of America, and they had this new cybersecurity rotational program that they started. And I was basically part of the first cohort of that. It was for women in cybersecurity. And yeah, it just sounded really cool, honestly. And I've had most of my experience by then was in data analytics and software engineering in my previous internships and work experience. So I didn't have any experience in cybersecurity, but this specific offer firstly, it was in the New York City metro area, which is where I wanted to be after I graduated. And it also was, I think, the most interesting in terms of career impact and just what I would be able to do, because I was rotating once a year into different teams in Bank of America. So I got to work on 3 different teams in 3 years, which I think is really hard to find when you're just starting out. But I also wanted to touch a whole bunch of different areas in cyber. So sorry, I feel like I'm like a chatterbox right now. But yeah.
I like it.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like I just gave like a 10-minute answer to a small question. But yeah, so basically I decided it because it was a good location. It also had really interesting work and I think pretty good job prospects for like the entire role. And it also paid a lot better than some of my other offers. So all 3 of those reasons were basically how I got into cybersecurity. And after I got in, I ended up really liking it. And yeah, here I am.
That's amazing. I'm glad you ended up liking cybersecurity, because now you're like teaching thousands of people how to also pursue this career, and like making like all of this content, which I can definitely see you're super passionate about. So that's really, really cool. So I know we're going to get this question, but you spoke about going to the Grace Hopper conference and then joining or getting into contact with people from Bank of America there. But yes. What type of requirements did you need to have to then basically be able to join a program like this?
Yeah, so from my experience, it was really just previous internship experience. It's a lot harder if you're a freshman to find internships, but it is still available out there. I still know freshmen who get internship opportunities. But what I recommend is what I had on my resume at the time was, so I worked at a computer repair shop. And that was like more hardware technical experience. And even though it wasn't cybersecurity related, it was still a lot of troubleshooting and like IT diagnostics. So even though I didn't necessarily start my career in IT, I had that experience on my resume, which was already pretty technical. Just like helping people like reset computers or like figure out certain issues, or if they had like some kind of ransomware. And, a lot of people back then, I say back then, but this was like 6-7 years ago. But basically like some people's computers will get locked down and you had to figure out what to do with it. So that was an experience on my resume that I think a lot of people can get if you're, in a town that has a computer repair shop. I would highly recommend doing something like that, because typically those are part-time and great for college students or if you're a bootcamp student. I also had undergrad research experience. So this was also done through a program in my school. And technically, I didn't get paid for it because the professor I worked with didn't have a stipend for undergrads and it was only for grad students. But I still decided to do part-time. It was basically like volunteer work, but it counted as undergrad research, which was a great experience on my resume. So I basically got to work on a project with a big data team at my school, which I've never touched before. I got to use some Python in a work environment, which I could also then talk about during interviews. So I basically did a lot of not necessarily internships, but a lot of different like side door ways to get experience onto my resume that, isn't just applying to like a real full on quote unquote internship. And that really helped boost my resume. By the time I was a senior, I already had like 3 or 4 different experiences on my resume that weren't just full on internships. And those ended up helping me get my first software engineering internship at JP Morgan, which was also on my resume by the time I talked to Bank of America. And if you guys know banks, typically banks will like the same talent, basically. So I find that if you've worked for a big bank before, a lot of the requirements that they're looking for in a candidate are very similar. And I think that also helped me a lot when I was looking for the cybersecurity job. And I wasn't even looking specifically for cybersecurity. It just so happened that the hiring manager that I talked to, and a lot of this is also opportunity and luck and like what's already on your resume. You never know what you're going to get. But the hiring manager I talked to, he started his career in software engineering and then also pivoted into cybersecurity. And now at the time he was like an MD or managing director at the bank. So he was like a pretty high position. And I think he saw in me and my resume what maybe he went through in his early career and basically took a chance on me, even though I had no, technical cybersecurity experience at the time. And yeah, so that's basically how I got in.
It's fascinating because that's almost like the common theme that we have as cybersecurity professionals. And I've spoken to a few people in the industry about this as well, is that because even for me, it was a hiring manager that took a chance on me, right? And
yes.
So now even hearing you say that, like, people look at they look at your credentials, your background, all of those things, but it's either a personality fit that clicks when you're networking with someone like a hiring manager or someone in the team, and they then recommend you, or it's like a hiring manager that senses the same kind of background, skills, and attribute, and then they take a chance on you. So that's such a massive thing, right? And why we hamper on the whole networking and going to conference aspect in this industry specifically.
Yeah, for sure. This is something I always recommend people who ask me like what they should do next. I'm like, if you have, certifications and experience and projects on your resume, your next step is really just to go to conferences, besides like as many as you can. There's a lot of local meetups that you can find as well on meetup.com for different cybersecurity groups and IT and tech groups. Always go out there and try to meet different people and see who you can network with, because you never know where that next job opportunity is going to come from. So definitely.
Yeah, exactly. So now I want to talk a little bit more about the experience at Bank of America, because this is a massive corporate now. It's a bank. You're in there as a newbie in cybersecurity. What was that like?
Yeah, I really liked my time at B of A. It was a really good experience. So I guess like the first thing is just the rotations that I was able to work in. My first team, I worked in more of so I basically split my time because I told my first manager, that I wanted to keep my coding skills. So on one half of my time split, I was doing software engineering on a network security application. I kind of consider this my first stint in security engineering, but we're basically building a networking tool from scratch in-house. And then the second half of my work was more of like a security program manager role, which was my manager's role at the time as well. And she basically owned the program for cybersecurity engineering and a bunch of different tools across the board, and basically providing visibility to them, and as well as, any networking or partners that we could work with other teams on. So I learned a lot of the business side of cybersecurity teams as well as the technical side. And then my second team was in a junior pen testing role. And in that role, I think that was the most out of comfort zone that I've done. I got into it doing a lot of CTFs, and so BFA hosts an annual internal CTF, which is a capture the flag. You basically do hacking challenges, and there's a scoreboard, and yeah, basically you're trying to do hacking challenges, and there's like little prizes at the end. And you can do it as a team or solo. And I basically had a lot of fun with this program, with this project, because I also had a red team mentor, and he basically taught me like, hey, these are some tools you can start with. Like, you can practice on a few of the beginner challenges. And that's basically how I got into my red team role, because one of my program leads for my cyber rotation program, she saw that, hey, like you seem to really like doing CTFs. Like maybe you should consider doing your next rotation in like the red team, doing something that is closer to pen testing. And I was like, this is pretty fun. So yeah, sure. And that's basically how I got into my next rotation. That's another thing that was great about this program at Bank of America. I got to choose what team I rotated into, which was, I think, one of the biggest blessings ever. Like just having that decision-making role, because a lot of times you start these rotation programs and you kind of already have a set path. But mine was, I basically interviewed managers and interviewed different teams and was able to choose like, hey, which one's the right fit for me? That was like a really, really good experience. And I did a year on that junior pen testing team. And then after that, I transitioned into a governance role, which was very different. In this role, I was doing internal audits specifically for our cyber engineering team. And that was something I'd never done before. So every rotation I did at Bank of America was basically a whole different field or sector in cybersecurity that I hadn't touched before, which was really awesome. And yeah, overall, I would say everyone I worked with was really nice to me, taught me a lot. I had so many different mentors across different teams. I think that's the most important thing. When you're starting out, you should have multiple mentors. I had mentors on the red team, on blue team, even in digital forensics and GRC roles. More senior members with like 10 plus 20 years of experience, as well as people who only had like 4 or 5 years of experience, who are like a little bit ahead of me in my career. And you can ask them for advice on different things because they're all from different areas and different times in their career. It's really helpful to have people that you can go to with questions on what to do next or like what path makes the most sense for you. And I think that also contributed to like my success in my early career.
Yeah. I completely agree with you on the mentor side. And I want to talk more deeper about the mentoring side, because I mean, that's a space that you are into now. I'm into that space. Mm-hmm. So I think we can talk a lot more deeper on that. But I just want to put context to when you were saying that the next rotation was into the GRC space, then I had a little giggle there, because by now I have this rolling thing where people probably think I am so far against GRC. And
really?
No one's against GRC. It's just that I happen to speak to more technical people all the time. And then because for me as well, throughout my journey, there was one space in my career. I'm a very technical person, right? I mean, architecture, engineering, that side of things. And then I went into the GRC space and it was very different. I mean, I think you have to be a specific type of person to enjoy and like GRC. And for those people, they love it, right? So it's good. We like GRC, but for some of us, it just isn't for us.
Oh yeah. No, I completely understand. I like hosted this GRC intro course or like session a few weeks ago, or last week, I guess. And I was like, guys, I promise I'll try to make this fun, because normally when people hear GRC, they're like, dude, documentation, policies, procedures, like, I don't want to hear about this for an hour. But it's actually not too bad. But it depends on the person. I'm not going to say everyone's going to enjoy it. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Now I have to speak to more GRC type people so we can save this. Some saving. So then I want to ask, so then you got to a point where you then left Bank of America and you changed jobs, right? Mm. So what was that journey like?
Good question. So the biggest thing was, throughout the backdrop of all of this, was the pandemic. And at the time, I started working full-time remote for B of A. They did start a return to office policy. So I had already gotten used to working remotely. So that was actually one of the biggest reasons why I decided to leave B of A. Another reason was that the team I rotated into, they were all in Charlotte, North Carolina. And at the time, I was still in the New York metro area. So I would be going into the office 5 days a week, but still hopping on a Zoom call to talk to my team. So at that point, I was like, maybe I should consider, because I was almost hitting 3 years at Bank of America at that time. And I considered looking for other roles. And I started interviewing actually for cybersecurity and software engineering roles. So at the time, I think I started looking towards the end of 2020, or maybe it was 2021. So the whole interview process was probably around 3 to 4 months, since I wasn't applying too heavily. I was applying to like a few a week because I was like trying to be a bit picky about the roles I was applying to. And I think by the end of it, I had 3 offers, not at the same time, but like kind of sporadically. And surprisingly, 2 of them were for software engineering roles. And only one of them was for cybersecurity, and that was for Stack Overflow as an information security analyst. And I guess nowadays people, use ChatGPT and a lot of AI tools, but back when I was in college, oh God, now I sound so old saying that, but back when I was in college, we used Stack Overflow, and, that was my saving grace. That was like everything back then. When, I was learning how to code, I was just looking for like, I don't know, how to make a string or something in Java or C# or Python or whatever. I used Stack Overflow a lot during college, and I'm sure, anyone learning how to code did. And yeah, I was like really excited about this opportunity to potentially work with them. It was a 3 or 4 interview process. So I basically did an interview with someone who was on the IT team, but also kind of like in the architecture space. And then I did an interview. Well, first I guess was with the hiring manager. I mean, with the HR recruiting. And then after I passed that, it was with the IT team. And then after that, it was with a senior security engineer who would be basically my tech lead. And then after that, it was with the IT, I think she was the senior IT and cybersecurity director. And she would have been my direct manager, since Stack Overflow is like a smaller company. So the levels aren't, it's now a bunch of like managers in between. And the whole team was like less than 10 people. So way different from from Bank of America, because we had like tens of thousands of people in cybersecurity. And like we all just own like one small part of the cybersecurity lifecycle. But at Stack Overflow, like we all touched everything. Like if you're on the team and like there's a problem, you hop on it, even if you like are the most junior on the team, which I was. So yeah, after that, I had a great time during all the interviews. They were technical, but also had like a good chunk of, I guess, behavioral and like getting to know me as a person, which I really liked. I really liked everyone I interviewed with. And I ended up accepting that offer in February of 2022, I believe. And yeah, that was how I got to Stack.
Awesome. So it's like a complete contrast of experience. So it's like the huge Bank of America, and then a much smaller organization and team at Stack Overflow. And I mean, looking back on your journey now, which do you prefer?
Oh, that's a tough question, actually. I think in terms of growth and all the experience that I was able to gain, I would probably say Stack Overflow, only because I basically worked on everything. My team was me and 2 other security analysts at the time, and then 2 security engineers. So, and then my manager. And then we ended up bringing in ended up actually being able to interview like my next manager in between the director of security and like my manager, who was, I guess, like the senior manager of cybersecurity. A lot of different titles. But yeah, I would say at Stack, I worked on everything from procurement to doing security questionnaires to working on our ISO 27001 audit, which was like a very big thing at the time. I was also rolling out our secure SDLC program. I got to work on like setting up a vulnerability management system, or like getting to assist with that, getting vulnerability scans set up, which we actually didn't even have. Like there's so many things that the bank had that I guess I sort of took for granted, because, you assume that all companies will have this piece of software or this thing that's already set up, and you kind of just go with the flow. But at a smaller company, you get to learn way more, because if you want a vulnerability scanner, your company may not even have one. And you may have to go out and look for the vendors yourself, which at the bank would never have happened. There's another team that you talk to that will vet the vendors for you and give you a list. And then they'll tell you like, hey, like these are the pros and cons of this one. Do you want to move forward? And then there's always like another team that handles something. But at Stack Overflow, if you don't do the work, then it doesn't get done. So I think I was able to take a lot more leadership and initiative, even as someone who only had 4 years of experience. And, some of the projects they had me working on, I was really surprised they trusted me with that kind of scope and that level of visibility for senior leadership. But you can only get that from a smaller company. So I do think if you're starting out and you have a chance to, working on a smaller security team definitely makes a big impact in helping you grow.
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't agree with that more. I think the amount of exposure you get, you might be working a lot and it might be, many different things that you touch and leave, but the overall experience that you'll gain from that is really, really significant then, as opposed to, in a bank, obviously it's very different depending also on the team that you're in, right? So if you are in the SOC in a bank, then the amount of threats that you're going to see and real world type of attack scenarios and things like that you have to respond to is really massive, so if you want to be in a SOC or threat intelligence or something like that, then a bank for exposure would be really good for those specific roles. But if you're trying to learn many different things and really grow your career into the other aspects of cybersecurity, then having this smaller organization experience that you get all of this exposure is really, really huge. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Agree. So do you think that the coding and software engineering skills that you've had has ultimately made a massive impact on your cybersecurity journey and your job selection and things like that?
I would say definitely. In my last role at Stack, they actually said one of the main reasons why they hired me was because I had software engineering experience, because one of the projects I led was secure SDLC. So as part of your ISO audit, you need to have a secure software development lifecycle program. Basically at that before for Stack, we still push out pretty secure code, but it didn't necessarily align with what we wanted, from a cybersecurity perspective, who can push code, whether or not it's how many times it's been checked, who checked it, how many reviews, how stringent the code reviews are, if they've gone through a code scan, before going live. These things weren't put in place yet. So when I came in, they already had this project in mind. And because I had cybersecurity experience, but also had software engineering experience, that was the main reason why they hired me, which is what my tech lead told me when I ended up joining the company. So it definitely does make an impact no matter what area of cybersecurity you come from, or even non-cybersecurity. You may have a piece of background that an interviewer or a hiring manager is looking at and they're like, wait, that's what we're looking for in a candidate. And I think that at the end of it, it's really what gets your foot in the door and separates you from other candidates who may have only had, 5-10 years of a cybersecurity experience, but then they ended up choosing me over those candidates because of my experience that was a little bit different. So I do think it definitely makes a big difference.
Yeah. And I think context for the role and the organization is so important. But then what would you say to software engineers that want to go into cybersecurity, but they maybe have a lack of confidence or they just don't know how to go about that?
Yeah. I think looking for transitional roles could be really helpful. For example, cybersecurity software engineering roles have become a lot more popular from what I've seen in job boards. So you're still an engineer, but you also focus on the security aspect of it, as well as learning specifically more AppSec focused material, like the OWASP Top 10, how to use, a web application scanner, how to use Burp Suite, Z-Attack proxy. There's a lot of open source tools that you can find online. So you can make a web app yourself and then throw all these little tests on it and run different vulnerability scans on it. And that could be a project on your resume that shows to your recruiter, hey, you're a software engineer, but you also have this interest in cybersecurity that could make a bigger difference in passing you to an interview with the hiring manager or a recruiter, just to gauge your skill level and potentially be able to move forward with an interview. So there's a lot that you can do because you already have those technical skills.
Yeah, I love that. That's super helpful because even if you look at cloud and infrastructure as code and those types of things, right? It's really the developer that now has to be also the network engineer and the security engineer because they're building all of this into the code. And so if you are already a software engineer, you know how to code, you know how to do those types of things, then like adding security on top of that by doing like just some project work sets you so far apart, even when it comes to a cloud security job or a cloud security role, or like you're saying, AppSec. I mean, that's massive in terms of looking at the secure coding practices, from even a code scan or a pipeline perspective, whether it's using Azure DevOps or GitHub, etc. So, I really like that. So, what would you say has been so far, just if we think in terms of the workplace, what are some challenges that maybe you faced in the workplace? It could be like as a person, as a junior, or technically from that perspective. What are some of the biggest challenges that you would say that you faced so far?
Yeah, I think in my early career, I was definitely a lot more soft-spoken as a person. I mean, now I'm making YouTube videos and like publishing them on the internet, but I think I was very quiet when I started my career, and I think my first manager would probably agree as well, because she was always, I was really blessed to have a really understanding first manager. She was very supportive and always tried to pull me into like different projects and sit in on meetings and like just hear like what was going on. But yeah, I was definitely a bit shyer, and during interviews, I would always be, or not during interviews, but during meetings, I would always be worried about saying the wrong thing or asking like a bad question. And I think that definitely impacted, how involved I could have gotten, or like being able to connect with more types of people. It wasn't until like at least like 2 or 3 years into working where I was like, hey, I'm comfortable like having one-on-ones with people and even hosting meetings. But in the beginning, I was pretty shy. And I would say that when you're just starting out, it is pretty normal, but you always want to give yourself some grace and give yourself chances to fail. And I'm not saying like fail, but I'm saying like give yourself a chance to, you might think that you're asking a bad question, or maybe you think you're looking stupid, but there are definitely other people on that call who may have the same questions, and they may have, 5-10 years of experience. So it's not always as bad as it seems in your head. And I would also say that another thing that I came across when I was in my early career, I had an experience where this person on my team was basically taking credit for the work that I was doing. And I didn't really know how to navigate this situation because I had maybe I was in the role for 8 months at the time. This was in my first rotation. And I noticed it in a meeting because, again, I was more soft-spoken, and I just let him, who was a more senior developer, this was for the network security app that we're working on. I basically let him demo the work that I did, but he didn't give me any credit for the fact that I did it. He basically just demoed it as if it was his own. And that was something that I was like, okay, there has to be a line drawn here. I can't just be doing work and sure, they can demo it, but they should at least be giving me the credit that I deserve for the work that I did. So basically from there, I went and talked to my tech lead, who's different from my manager, but he helped me mostly with the network security app that we're working on. So I talked to him about it, and he knew that I worked on that feature because we worked on it together, or he helped me with certain issues I ran into. And we ended up basically talking, confronting the person. I also told my manager about this, and yeah, that was my first confrontation at work that I guess I could have just not brought up and, brushed under the rug, and it might have kept happening. But I'm pretty proud of how I handled it, just being able to first talk to someone you trust, a manager, a tech lead, team lead, and then, confronting the person directly yourself, and just telling them, hey, I did this work, and I would really appreciate, even if you're demoing, that you would give me credit during the demos when you're doing them, or I can also demo them myself moving forward. And that's eventually what I started doing. So yeah, you may or may not run into something like that, but I think everyone would face a time when they have to speak up for themselves, even if you may not feel as comfortable doing it yet. But trust me, it'll really help you grow and get more comfortable, I guess, just putting yourself out there and standing up for yourself.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I mean, it happens more often than we think, and especially to people who just keep your head down and do the work. You keep your head down, quiet, do the work, and it happens so often. But I love that you, like, even in the way that you've shared like some great ways to respond to a scenario like that, because I think it's such a disservice to someone in the workplace to have this feeling and now go away with this feeling and just go like, oh, it's okay,
Right.
and then continue working on this thing, knowing that you'll be kind of overlooked when it comes to the time of really people actually knowing and realizing the value of the work that you put in, simply because someone else is taking, the credit for your work, which is really not a great thing. And it speaks to the sense of this, personal branding these days in cybersecurity is a massive thing, but it's also about your branding in the workplace, right? I had this discussion with some of my colleagues the other day, because I also think that I'm a very introverted person, contrary to what people on the internet may think. And I'm a quiet, introverted, technical person, right? I'm not out there. I'm not the one that's going to be the loudest in a meeting and, talking as much as, another colleague or other colleagues would. It's just not my personality.
I get
that. And then I asked, but is that the requirement? Is it the requirement that the one who speaks the loudest and gives the most presentations, no matter who worked on the initiatives and projects, etc., is that the person that is going to, get the recognition and kind of appraisals and promotions and whatever have it over the long course, and kind of that discussion spanned into no, because, the industry has evolved and it's not about that anymore. But if I don't ask those questions, then other people that are sitting around me, they also think it, but they're not asking the questions and they're not brave enough. So if you are sharing your experience, and actually that even though you were quiet and even though you were the most junior person in the team, but you went there and you stood up for yourself in that situation, I think that's phenomenal, because it really just helps other people with realizing this is happening to me. Okay, let me go do something about it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love that. I agree.
Really great. So now I want to pause here, and then before we discuss the rest of your amazing journey, I want to go to a section that we call rapid fire over here. So rapid fire, I am going to ask you a bunch of questions back to back. You basically answer them in the simplest form that you can with the first answer that comes to mind. Sound good?
Okay. Yes. Right. I'm ready.
Let's do it. All right. So, red team or blue team?
Blue team.
Oh, why? Okay.
Oh.
Fine, I agree.
I did a lot more work on blue team side at Stack Overflow, and I've come to really enjoy it.
Okay. What is your favorite AI tool to use these days?
Honestly, just good old ChatGPT.
Love it. What is the best, or maybe one of the best, because I think you might have more than one here, book that you have used to help you in your cybersecurity career?
Ooh. The book that I used to study for my CompTIA Security Plus, which is all-in-one. I read that book cover to cover. It was the first time I read a book full since college, a textbook, and it was 700 pages, I think. But it helped me pass my cert, so I recommend it to everyone.
Nice. What was it called? Can you repeat the name?
It's the all-in-one CompTIA Security Plus exam guide by Conklin and White.
Okay. Nice. All right. So what is your favorite programming language, but specifically for cybersecurity?
Oh, specifically for cybersecurity. I would say Python. Honestly, I started learning Go for a bit, and I do think that that is really good for scripting if you're getting into cybersecurity, but I'm more familiar with Python, so Python. But for non-cybersecurity, C#. even though I know not everyone likes that language. I really like it.
Okay, I agree with you on Python though for cybersecurity. So yeah, it's also the only one I know because I'm not a coder, but Python is my jam.
That's good enough.
I agree on that one.
Python's good enough.
What's your favorite cybersecurity educational platform for beginners? Yeah, I know, right? Because that's why I was like favorite. Or you can give three. Give your top three. Because because then it makes it easier, I think.
I would say probably Try Hack Me is a good one. They have a lot of free material and a lot of free rooms. And I also did a lot of their challenges when I was starting out. I want to also say Hack the Box. I didn't use it as much as Try Hack Me, but I do think Hack the Box is good. Let's Defend is also a really good one, mostly for defensive security. Blue Team. Okay, I guess that's three. Yeah. But those are good. Zero to Mastery is also good. There's a lot, but I guess those are three good ones to start with.
Yeah, that's like on the spot because I feel like I would have 10. So if someone would like give me one, it's like, no, that's terrible.
Yeah, there's so many different resources out there nowadays. Even just like the free like virtual internship platforms like Forage, Clicked. There's so many different programs out there now that didn't exist a few years ago, I feel like.
How unlucky were we?
Yeah.
Right? Now people there's so many resources, so many platforms. I'm like, I don't even know which one to talk about anymore because there's so many. And how unlucky were we that it was just like, you just have to read a book or find your way through in the workplace and things like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you love to travel. What's been your favorite travel destination so far?
I would say one of my favorite, it's hard to say number one. I really enjoyed visiting Banff in Alberta, Canada. We did a road trip last year up to Banff, and it's basically a national park. And that place was really pretty. I really like hiking, so that's a good one.
Nice. Okay, the last rapid fire then. What is one cybersecurity myth that you wish would go away?
Cybersecurity myth. I think the biggest one is that you need experience in cybersecurity to get into cybersecurity. And I know there's people who won't agree with that, especially given the tough job market, but I still have students and people in my Discord channel, just community members, who are still getting jobs into cybersecurity without experience. And I know it's hard, but I do know that it's still possible. And it's, okay, this is no longer rapid fire. I'm talking too much. But yeah, okay, that's my answer. I think it's possible. More than people think it is.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And you did great with rapid fire. But I mean, that's a great response. It's a great response. And I completely agree with you. And I mean, I speak to people. I have so many people connected on LinkedIn and people are getting jobs, right? I think, you have to be more intentional and targeted about your approach, but people definitely are getting jobs with no experience. So, it's not an impossible thing. And also I think experience doesn't have to be paid working experience. I think you did a great job earlier on explaining that you had certain experiences, you took part in certain initiatives, even in school. And so therefore you added those as skills and experience. So it doesn't have to be paid. Yeah.
Yes, for sure. I think people forget that a lot. Even volunteer experience, that's huge. You can volunteer for like a animal shelter near you and help them do a web scan on their website or something. That's really cool experience to put on your resume that not everyone has. So just think outside the box when it comes to experience.
Absolutely. So can you tell us a little bit about the journey now? So what are you doing now? what is life like now?
Yeah.
What's happening? Yeah.
So right now I am currently on a career sabbatical, and it's been a year now, which is crazy. I'm basically reevaluating every quarter what this looks like, what my next steps are. I did start applying to a few jobs earlier this summer, and then I started getting a bit busier with content, especially towards the end of the year. I've been posting a lot more videos, but yeah, I think most of my time now is spent mostly creating YouTube videos. And at the time when I was working full time, I did 40 hours a week at my job, and I was doing more than 40 hours a week on YouTube on top of that, because I was posting 2 videos a week on YouTube, and then all the other short form videos as well. So it was a lot. But now I have an editor who helps me with some of the final edits, which is really nice. So yeah, I'm basically a full-time creator, which I never thought would be, my path, or any time in my career. I'm very risk adverse. So I would never have been like, yo, I'm just going to quit my job and see what happens. Like, that was never part of the plan. But now that I've done it for a year, I am really enjoying my time doing this. And I love that I'm making an impact. I love that I'm able to reach people and share resources, especially on LinkedIn. I actually started posting on LinkedIn this year. And before that, my LinkedIn was disabled because I just kind of wanted to keep it separate from my work life. And I know professionally, one of my previous employers didn't like that I was doing some stuff online, or posting videos and sharing content. So just, because we worked in cybersecurity, so it made sense. So I had it disabled for a long time, but posting on LinkedIn now and reaching a larger audience and being able to share my resources, the ones that I wish I had when I was starting out, it's been very, very fulfilling work.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan, right? You know that by now. I'm a huge fan and stalker of your platform all the time, because you do share amazing resources.
Thank you.
For the audience, then, how do you go about finding these resources? Is it that you're always on, always engaged? Are you on certain forums? How can they also find resources?
Yeah, I'm on everything. Yeah. I'm on different Discord channels. For example, even just the Try Hack Me Discord, they announced a few weeks ago that they were doing a customized career map for 10 of their users. And they only announced this on their Discord. I guess they were trying to make it a bit more discreet. So I was sharing it with my audience, hey, you guys need to take advantage of this. There's so much out there. I see a lot of resources on LinkedIn. I'll see it on different platforms like Instagram even. YouTube is also another one, but I found YouTube is typically a little later in terms of resources, because long form content is typically takes longer to make. So it's different from a tweet or a short form video that someone can post on a platform that has, I guess, shorter content. Yeah. So typically I'm just on a whole bunch of different platforms on all day. And if I see a cool resource, I'll share it with my audience. So yeah.
Yeah, and that's really cool. And it's such a big benefit for people these days that you share that, because a lot of newbies are trying to get in and they don't know where to go. So simply by consuming your content, they get access to the resources, which is really, really phenomenal. But then outside of that, you also have your own Discord, right? And you also have webinars that you host, if I'm not mistaken. Can you talk a little bit about the other initiatives that you have outside of YouTube?
Yeah. So I mostly create content on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Instagram, I would say, are my main platforms. I did do one live session. It was my first ever live session, teaching something just myself. And that was hosted by Clicked. It's a learning platform. And that was specifically on GRC. I may continue to do those. No promises yet, but maybe one early next year if it aligns. And these sessions are basically learning sessions, and they're on different topics. So next year's topic won't be on GRC, but it'll be on something else. And yeah, I don't do those very often, but I would say maybe, every few months, it would be cool to do something like that. And then on YouTube, I usually post once a week. This is typically sharing roadmaps, career guides, resources, anything else that I find interesting, or if there's like an update on the cybersecurity job market. I really like keeping up with those job market trends. And on LinkedIn, I'll usually post twice a week, mostly sharing resources or my experience or anything that I can share that will benefit whoever is viewing it. Like today, I did make a post on some cybersecurity live sessions, and those are coming up, I think, in November. And those are free. So I highly recommend watching a lot of these live sessions. And those are also on Clicked. So it's basically a bunch of tech cybersecurity professionals coming in and doing like a shadowing session. So you can watch them do or teach a specific topic. And some of them are also skills challenges. So you can follow along hands-on with what they're doing. So it's really cool. Like nowadays, learning is so diversified that it's no longer just watching a video. You can hop on a live shadowing session or skills building course, and they'll like give you the material and you just follow along and learn a new skill. It's really cool. So I highly recommend doing more of that.
I love the evolution. I love how it's
I know,
evolved. Like,
it's crazy.
Yeah, it's so cool. But then, so one thing I wanted to ask more specifically for the audience is you do share a lot of resources, right? But what do you think is one of the biggest mistakes maybe that people are making when they're trying to pursue this journey? Because I'm sure, as with me as well, like there's a lot of questions that come through, and there seems to be a lot of confusion around like how to even start, right? So what do you think are some of the common mistakes that people make, and what should they consider when they're trying to start?
Yeah. I think one thing I've noticed a lot of is sometimes I'll get messages from people in my audience or community members who say things like, hey, I have my Security Plus, my Network Plus, my A Plus, my XYZ certification, and I can't find a job. Like what am I doing wrong? And then I review their resume, and it's primarily because they only have like these beginner entry-level certifications and no projects on their resume, or like maybe like one project, but it's not very technical. So I think that's the biggest thing. A lot of people will get too hooked on the certification game. I know cybersecurity does focus a lot on certifications, especially for beginners, but there's a lot of experience out there you can get through projects, volunteering, all the things that we've already mentioned in this call. And I don't think enough people take advantage of those, because you can't just rely, maybe like 7 years ago, you could rely on having your Security Plus, and that would really be a strong foot in the door to get into cybersecurity. But nowadays, there's so many people with their Security Plus looking for a job, especially with the tech recession and tech layoffs that happened during COVID. Like there are people who may have been in different sectors who are trying to get into cybersecurity, and Security Plus is the most common certification. So they all take Security Plus, and they also have like other experience that is technical or like from other sectors. So that's also what leads to a more competitive job market. And you as an entry-level person really want to differentiate yourself by adding on more technical projects or more different types of work experience. Again, it doesn't have to be official work experience. There's a lot of different ways to get that experience on your resume, but don't just stop at these certifications. Yes, they are really good for your resume, but it's not everything. I would say it's about half. I think it's half certifications and half technical experience that you can get elsewhere. And on top of that, you also need to go out there and network and do as much as you can to like meet people. Even just networking on LinkedIn is great. I think there was a person that I saw a few months ago, and he found a job. He posted this where he found a job basically through a listing on LinkedIn. And after he applied, he clicked on the hiring manager, because now LinkedIn can show you the hiring manager who posted that job. And he basically messaged them and said, hey, thank you for posting this job listing. I've applied. Really appreciate the opportunity. And they basically got back to him and were like, hey, yeah, I'll keep an eye out for your resume. Thanks. And that already, like, when people look through your resume, there could be like hundreds of applicants, but the hiring manager could recognize your name from a thank you email or a thank you message you sent them on LinkedIn. And then he ended up getting the job after like 3 or 4 rounds of interviews. So I think it makes a big difference, like talking to people, not just, relying on certifications and your projects. After you get all of that and your resume looks great, you need to go out there and do as much networking and giving yourself different opportunities. Just more touch points for opportunities, basically. It's basically like creating your own luck because you have so many different people that you're talking to and networking and events. But I would say both of those actually are the things. Don't just stop at certifications, and definitely don't sleep on not networking. Or definitely don't sleep on networking because it makes a huge difference.
Yeah. I love what you said there when you said create your own luck. Like, I love that statement because it's so true. Many people who have succeeded say, like, I was lucky, or, I was lucky to have met the manager that hired me. But it's in essence creating your own luck, because it is exactly like you're saying. It's like, how or the what you can do is super important, and that's created by the projects and experience that you have, right? And then the what is by the credentials that you have, your education or certifications or those things. And then it's like how you go about it is super important, with like the networking part and speaking to people and going to these conferences and getting a mentor, and even just interacting on LinkedIn. I feel like LinkedIn is so slept on here, because when people find our LinkedIn accounts as an example, especially yours, you post a lot on LinkedIn, and then you're connected with so many other cybersecurity professionals. And this includes, vendors, hiring managers, these types of people that can see valuable comments on LinkedIn, and it ultimately boosts a candidate's profile if you have good engagement on LinkedIn. It really does.
Yeah, I completely agree. LinkedIn, I have some cybersecurity friends who are like, hey, these people connected with me because I commented on one of your posts, and they're breaking into cybersecurity, or they already work in cybersecurity. So it really is a network effect. People want to connect with other people who are interested or work in cybersecurity. And I really recommend just getting connected and getting on there. And again, with the making your own luck, if I didn't have the experience that I had talking when I went to talk to the hiring manager at Grace Hopper, they wouldn't have talked to me. They wouldn't have considered me for this position. And I think that's the biggest thing. Your experience gets you to where you want to go. And not a lot of people really think of it that way when they think of someone getting a job or passing a certification. There's so many things that lead up to that. And while it definitely is I think there's that quote where luck is the intersection of hard work and opportunity. And I completely agree with that specific statement.
Yeah, definitely agree. So tell us what's next. So I heard a little bit about applying for jobs, but not really going for it right now, and a lot of initiatives coming from your platform. So can you tell us a little bit what's next? What can people look forward to coming from you in the next few months?
Yeah, so definitely you will see more content from me in the next few months. I'm mostly considering if I do go back into the workforce, it would have to be something that is a contractor role that is part-time, because that's, honestly speaking, the most time I can commit to a job right now on top of YouTube. And that's, my biggest concern. I don't want to go back to a place where I'm just burning out in different cycles. But that also, makes it a bit harder for me to get back into cybersecurity, because I'm specifically focusing on non-full-time work, which is less of the norm in cybersecurity. So I would say that, that'll probably continue in the next few quarters, and I'll reevaluate depending on what that looks like in the new year. I usually give a little work update on my different platforms every once in a while, because I know people ask me hey, how's the job search? And that's usually when I give an update on how things are going, if I'm doing any interviews. So yeah, I guess you can keep an eye out for that on platforms. And everything else, I think, is just, honestly, I don't have a really strict 1 year, 5 year, 10-year plan. I've never been that kind of person, but I do like having certain projects I'm working on. But I guess another thing I'm working on is a mentorship program, but that is currently waitlisted, so I don't have anything out right now, but I guess that's another thing that's in the works.
That sounds very exciting. And it's definitely something that I think will be super valuable to the community. So I'm definitely excited for you on that. And I hope to see more coming out on that soon.
Okay, Okay.
So
yes, thank you.
can you tell us, for people who don't already know, where can they find you? What are all the handles and platforms that they can find you at?
Yeah. So on YouTube and LinkedIn, I am with Sandra. I believe that should be it. And on Instagram, you can find me at Cyber with Sandra.
Awesome. Well, Sandra, thank you so much for chatting with me. This has been super cool,
really
fun, and exciting. I'm like, it's so fascinating to me, like your journey, and now, like, just even, you say you're very risk averse, but I mean, the sabbatical and then going full time into content and YouTube and LinkedIn. And I mean, you're super successful on LinkedIn, which is absolutely phenomenal to see. So, I'm rooting for you all the way. And I do think we'll chat again soon. So, but thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this convo, so appreciate it.
This is Cybersecurity Uncomplicated, and I'm your host, Cyber Queen.